Welcome to the final experiments. The final experiments are a preponderance of evidence against flat Earth, and the final experiments all confirm the globe. These experiments were all conducted in December of 2024 when 4 flat earthers and 4 globers went on a journey to Antarctica with me, Will Duffy. We spent time in Punta Arenas, Chile, which is at the southern tip of South America, before flying to Antarctica. This entire trip allowed us to conduct historic experiments and collect data firsthand from an area of the world that few people will ever have the opportunity to visit and do this themselves. Prior to my announcement of the final experiment in early 2024, a vast majority of flat earthers, with very few exceptions, promoted the Gleason's map of the world, which is an azimuthal equidistant projection. This map had the North Pole at the center and pushed the south to the outer perimeter of the known world. This made Antarctica an ice wall perimeter around all the world's continents, which served to hold in all the world's oceans, as flat earthers claim water must have a container. It also extends the entire southern hemisphere into a larger and larger area, where on the globe, everything south of the equator gets closer and closer together. This made being at the southern tip of South America and in Antarctica the perfect place to test flat Earth claims and also confirm the globe predictions. Every single flat Earth claim failed. Every flat Earth prediction was demonstrably false. The final experiments are meant to be taken collectively, just like evidence in a court of law. Undoubtedly, flat earthers will attempt to discredit individual experiments we did, while at the same time ignoring the rest. If they cannot provide an accurate map of the world and a working model that can account for the results of all of these final experiments collectively, that is because we do not live on a flat Earth. If they try to say these experiments are not actual experiments, but only observations, that is because they cannot reconcile our findings with a flat Earth. If they say that flat Earth does not make predictions, that is because making accurate and testable predictions based on a flat Earth is impossible, because a flat Earth does not exist. You cannot make and test predictions based on something that is not real. Maps of the globe exist because the globe exists. The entire globe model exists because the globe exists. Countless globe predictions come true every single day, and countless future globe predictions will continue to happen exactly as predicted because the globe exists. If a flat earther tells you that there is no accurate flat Earth map and there is no working flat Earth model and that they don't make predictions, that is an implicit admission that a flat Earth does not exist, because you can map things that exist. You can model things that exist, and you can make very specific predictions that come true based on something that actually exists and is testable. I created the final experiment to give both sides, flat Earth and globe, an equal opportunity to prove their side. Only the globe side returned with evidence supporting their position. The globe side returned with tons of concrete evidence that both accurately matches the globe model and also falsifies flat Earth. This brings us to South Pole flights. Every single year, flights depart from multiple continents and head south, and they all end up at the exact same geographic location, the South Pole. This not only confirms the globe, but it would also be impossible on a flat Earth. Before we dive into South Pole flights, it's crucial to point out that the South Pole itself refutes flat Earth. There cannot be a geographic South Pole on a flat Earth, as south on a flat Earth is all directions away from the North Pole. So south on a flat Earth gets bigger and bigger indefinitely, whereas on a globe, everything south of the equator gets smaller and smaller and closer together, eventually coming to a single point, the geographic South Pole. In our South Pole video, in the Final Experiments series, we show how this special privileged place on the globe is the only place in the world where the right to left 24-hour sun does not change elevation angle, and where the south celestial pole is directly above the observer. In this video, we are going to look again at this special privileged place on the globe where all flights heading due south in the southern hemisphere will all meet up at the same geographic location, the South Pole. Here, flat earther Karen B. described this as a real final experiment.
Well, my idea that I've been saying for the real final experiment, what it should have been, is they should have had 3 different teams, and they should have had one team leave from Australia to Antarctica, and one from South America to Antarctica, and one from Africa, South Africa to Antarctica, because all 3 of these places advertise that they have trips to the South Pole, and from your trip to the South Pole, you can pay extra to go to the actual geographic South Pole from all 3 of these places. So if they really wanted to end it, they could take 3 different teams and leave from those 3 different locations, and everybody go to the South Pole, and everybody rendezvous at the actual geographic South Pole at the same time, all coming from different areas. One trip, boom, let's prove it. Let's do it.
That's the best I've heard thus far.
She is correct in calling this a real final experiment, as this would not be possible on a flat Earth. And flights leaving 3 different continents, heading south and meeting up at the same place is exactly what would happen on a globe. So what does happen with flights in the southern hemisphere that fly due south? That's right. The globe prediction is correct again, and the flat Earth prediction is completely false. This will be a common theme in this series. Globe predictions were correct, and every flat Earth prediction was wrong. Flat Earthers predicted there was no 24-hour sun in Antarctica.
But there is no midnight sun in Antarctica.
And no 24-hour moon.
Right? You know, there's a 24-hour moon in the north, but not a 24-hour moon in the south.
That the sun at the southern tip of Chile would set in a northerly direction.
All you have to do is watch which way it tracks. If it goes west by northwest, you're on a flat Earth.
That there was no south celestial pole.
In the southern outer hemisphere, people say that the stars rotate in the opposite direction. They make circles in the opposite direction, and that can only happen on a ball Earth. I have yet to see any real proof of this.
That nonstop southern hemisphere flights were fake.
And every time flat earthers have attempted to book the nonstop flight, it fails to go through, gets canceled and refunded days before departure, or changes to a non-direct flight.
That there was no South Pole.
No one's at the South Pole because there is no South Pole.
And now that flights starting in different continents would never end up in the same place when flying south. Multiple times every year, flights leave Africa, South America, and New Zealand to get to Antarctica. And once in Antarctica, after flying south for a short period of time, they all end up at the geographic South Pole. This is not only confirmation of the globe, but more importantly, is completely impossible on a flat Earth. On a flat Earth, flights originating in Punta Arenas, Chile, Cape Town, South Africa, and Christchurch, New Zealand, if they headed south, would never cross paths and would in fact get further and further from each other indefinitely. But this is not what happens in reality. Flights leaving these three cities, spanning 3 different continents, all end up at the same geographic location when flying due south, and that's the geographic South Pole. Now, flat earthers are undoubtedly going to say that these flights are also fake, just like they did with nonstop Southern Hemisphere flights. And that's totally fine with me because the Final Experiment series is systematically documenting how flat Earth claims are consistently incorrect. I personally know 3 people who have flown to the South Pole. Anthony Powell, who we've covered in other videos in this series, and one of them we actually all met on our trip to Antarctica, and she flew to the South Pole while we were at Union Glacier. Now, these flights to the South Pole happen every year and are available to the general public. You can purchase your own flight to the South Pole, or you can apply to work in Antarctica, which may include work at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. The first time I ever heard someone point out to a flat earther that people work at the South Pole was when Professor Dave mentioned this to Flat Earth Dave. Of course, Professor Dave was right, but listen to Flat Earth Dave's response.
No, you say the South Pole isn't real.
We don't.
Even though there's people who go there and work there, and
people work at the South Pole.
yeah,
prove it. Okay.
Yes, Dave Weiss, people do work at the South Pole, and yes, it's very easy to prove. We will start with Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions. ALE is the company we used for the Final Experiment to get us to Antarctica. ALE is an incredible company that runs over a dozen trips to Antarctica every year. They fly people to Antarctica from Punta Arenas, Chile, which is at the southern tip of South America. And they offer flights to the South Pole from Union Glacier Camp. Now, not just any airplane can fly to the South Pole. They do not have a blue ice runway at the South Pole, and so only ski planes can land there. Ski planes are aircraft specifically equipped with skis for landing, as opposed to the traditional wheels that the vast majority of planes use to land. So this is an extreme limitation to the available aircraft that can be used to get to the South Pole. ALE uses a Basler BT-67, which is a converted DC-3. This is a very small aircraft that can seat a maximum of just 18 passengers, can only cruise at about 215 miles per hour, and has a range of only approximately 1,800 miles. These limitations will be crucial later in the video as to why flights to the South Pole are simply impossible on a flat Earth. I met someone in Antarctica who is from England. Her name is Lizzie. She found TFE extremely fascinating and started hanging out with all of us for multiple days. And she flew to the South Pole from Union Glacier while we were all in Antarctica together. Her flight from Union Glacier to the South Pole in their Basler ski plane was about 4 hours. And here are some of the pictures she took while visiting both the geographic South Pole and the enormous Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. Another company that flies tourists to the South Pole is White Desert. White Desert flies people to Antarctica from Cape Town, South Africa, which is at the southern tip of Africa, to Wolf's Fang Runway, which is their blue ice runway. Their flights to the South Pole use the same aircraft as ALE, the Basler BT-67. Now, their flight takes a total of 7 hours and requires a stop to refuel after about 5 hours. And this is, again, due to the small aircraft and because White Desert's Witchaway Camp is right at 71 degrees south compared to ALE's Union Glacier Camp, which is right at 80 degrees south. And finally, there are flights to the South Pole from McMurdo Station and Scott Base. McMurdo and Scott Base are so close in proximity to one another that they share airfields. And they share 2 airfields, one for wheeled aircraft and the other for ski planes. Flights coming into McMurdo and Scott Base originate in Christchurch, New Zealand, and land at Phoenix Airfield. And then Williams Field is the airfield used for ski planes and specifically for the flights to and from the South Pole. My friend John Santandrea, who is actually just called back to Antarctica for work and is there as I record this video, John works at the South Pole every year. And he also flew to the South Pole while TFE was in Antarctica in December of 2024. He flew in this LC-130, which is a ski-equipped aircraft of the United States Air Force, designed specifically for use in the Arctic and Antarctic. The LC-130 is a bigger aircraft than a Basler and can fly almost double the speed, reaching a maximum speed of over 400 miles per hour and a cruising speed of about 366 miles per hour. So the flight from Williams Field to the South Pole is just a 3-hour flight. These 3 South Pole flights all match up perfectly with the globe model, where again, everything south of the equator gets closer and closer together. When you get as far south as Antarctica, everything gets really close in proximity, and traveling south from anywhere in Antarctica brings you to the exact same geographic location, the South Pole. This is just impossible on a flat Earth. Heading south from Punta Arenas, Chile to Union Glacier, Antarctica puts you nowhere near those who head south from Cape Town, South Africa to get to Witchaway Camp, Antarctica. And neither of those locations are anywhere near those who head south from Christchurch, New Zealand to McMurdo Station and Scott Base in Antarctica. To make matters worse, flying south from these 3 locations in Antarctica on a flat Earth would only put everyone further and further apart. But in reality, people at Union Glacier, Witchaway Camp, and McMurdo and Scott Base can all get to the South Pole Station in very short flights on relatively small and slow aircraft. Just as flat earthers are unable to locate the ceremonial South Pole and the Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station on any flat Earth map, they will also be unable to show which direction these 3 flights travel in order to all meet up at the same geographical location. They cannot have the planes head south, as they would only travel further and further away from each other. And if they attempt to claim that they are instead traveling east or west in order to have these planes somehow meet up together, which is what happens in reality, one of the 3 planes would never meet up with the other 2. And let's not forget that the short flight times on the relatively slow ski planes would also prevent even the 2 planes headed toward each other from ever getting anywhere near reaching each other, as a flat Earth makes the South bigger and bigger the further you get from the equator. So add South Pole flights to the growing list of experiments and observations that were part of TFE that flat earthers have no answer for. Our trip to Antarctica was incredibly eye-opening, and everything we saw, learned, and documented is what is driving the current significant exodus from flat Earth. I originally created the final experiment specifically to observe and record the 24-hour sun in Antarctica. But every step of the way through our journey, other flat Earth predictions kept being falsified, and the globe model was confirmed over and over and over again. Make sure to check out all of these in our other videos in the Final Experiments series. At the end of this video, enjoy a flight over Antarctica in a Basler ski plane. And please share this video with anyone you know who is a flat earther or considering flat Earth. As Jesus said in John 8:32, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.